making it easier to push Palestinians off their land, accelerating the annexation of the West Bank and taking ever more control of the region's water supplies and religious sites. Israel's Security Cabinet's new measures are causing alarm. While the war in Gaza has raged on, Israel already fast-tracked settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank, approving more than 50 settlements there last year alone. The latest plan will increase Israel's control in the region and take it from the Palestinian Authority. It's a clear plan, with the Israeli finance minister saying he wants to stamp out the idea of a Palestinian state. Well, here is how the United Nations has reacted.
The Secretary General is gravely concerned by the reported decision of the Israeli Security Cabinet to authorize a series of administrative and enforcement measures in Area A and Area B of the occupied West Bank. The Secretary General warns that the current trajectory on the ground, including this decision, is eroding the prospects for a two-state solution. He reiterates that all Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem and their associated regime and infrastructure, have no legal validity and are in flagrant violation of international law, including relevant United Nations resolutions.
Let's take a closer look at how different this is from what we've seen from Israel in the past, and to look at the legality of it all. We're joined now by social and cultural historian of modern Palestine and Israel, Yair Wallach. Thanks so much for your time and joining us on France 24. Can I start simply by asking you that? I mean, how big a change is this? I mean, we've seen the settlements being built for years and years already.
So it's a significant step in the sense that according to the Oslo Accords from the 90s, Palestinians had some powers over something like 40% of the West Bank, and this was supposed to be an interim situation towards some kind of Palestinian independence. We got stuck in that stage. Now the cabinet is taking over significant powers, even within those 40% of the West Bank, opening it to house demolitions and to Israeli purchasing of land within those areas.
So do you see this, if you like, as almost an official end then to those Oslo Accords of the 1990s and an end to this idea of a two-state solution?
It's gearing towards that horizon very clearly. I mean, ever since the Israeli government took place and was established in 2022, they said very clearly that their aim in the guidelines say a complete takeover of the entire land between the river and the sea, very explicitly. Now, what they've done since is a series of steps of de facto annexation of the West Bank, and that's the most significant of these. And we should add this to the escalation of settler violence, which is pushing out communities all across the West Bank. Basically, small communities are fleeing from their land in fear of settler violence, as you can see in the back.
So where does this leave Palestinians and Palestine?
I think Palestinians understand that there's an attempt here by the radical right, which is a radical right government in Israel, to destabilize the West Bank and to lead to some kind of an uprising. They're being pushed on every aspect, economically, in terms of civic powers, in terms of settler violence. And what the right in Israel is hoping for, some kind of Palestinian uprising that would in turn allow it to take measures like we've seen in Gaza, in the West Bank. That's their plan. They're hoping for mass demolitions. They're hoping to push people out within the West Bank, maybe out of the West Bank. Palestinians have been relatively resisting that quietly, not taking violent means, but this could lead to some kind of explosion, which would be very dangerous.
It sounds like a total push to annihilate Palestinians completely. Like, as you're saying, we've seen such violence already for years and years. And yet the international reaction, Israel seems to be allowed to plough on with impunity, because already the settlements that we've seen since 1967 are illegal when it comes to international law.
Yes, we usually have a statement of concern and condemnation and not much more than that. And even in this case, I think the U.S. made it clear in October that they won't allow the annexation of the West Bank. I'm not sure what it means in reality, because, as I've said, this is accelerating on the ground as we speak for the last few months, and constant pressure on various areas across the West Bank. So it seems like the international community is basically waiting for this to blow up before it does anything.
Now, Israel seized control of the West Bank in 1967. Can you tell us a bit more about that, what it was like before and how it has been changing since?
So up until 67, between 48 and 67, it was ruled by Jordan as part of the Kingdom of Jordan. Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza in 67 and then held it under military occupation. Starting with small steps of settlements in the 70s, accelerating rapidly in the 80s, and then the Oslo Accords were supposed to reverse that and lead to some kind of Palestinian independence, and Palestinians believed that they would get statehood. We got stuck, as I said, in an interim stage for the last 30 years. But what this government is doing is not just to basically create a de facto permanent apartheid situation, which in some ways exists already in the territories, but to reverse it and to destabilize it in the view of a complete takeover, much further annexation, much further settlements. And their hope is what happened in Gaza would happen in the West Bank. I mean, they saw the 7th of October attack by Hamas as the perfect excuse for them to take much more extreme measures in Gaza, and they're hoping for a similar scenario in the West Bank.
Are there any voices in Israel, do you think, against what the government and the authorities in Israel are doing to the Palestinian people?
There are some voices. Certainly, there are Israelis that actually volunteer in the West Bank to protect some Palestinian communities, but this is a small minority. Most of the society is, I would say, uninterested in this question, even if it's not joining actively with the settlers in these efforts. So at the moment, we see a little real opposition. And I should say that the government is pushing on all fronts, also within Israel, in terms of constitutional reforms that give it much more powers vis-a-vis the courts and the Knesset. So this is seen as just one of many, many issues within Israel.
And finally, just given what we've seen in the past and looking at it historically, do you expect the international community to change in their reaction? I mean, we've seen, as we were saying, virtually no reaction to the horrific things we've seen in Gaza.
I have very little hopes in this regard. I mean, I think that the question is what the US would do. I think Israel doesn't expect any meaningful sanctions from any other factor. We've seen that the only thing that got the EU to actually consider sanctions was the Israeli attack on Qatar. That's the moment where the EU realized that the current government is a destabilizing element within the Middle East. But then they stepped back once a ceasefire was announced. Whether the US would do anything, it's a question. I think that's it would remain to be seen, and I don't expect much from them in the immediate future.
And given your knowledge of the historical context, can you give us your opinion on why the international community isn't stepping in?
I think at the moment, the deference to the US and the Trump administration is the main consideration, given that there are so many reasons and areas in which the EU or the UK or other powers can get into trouble with Trump. They don't see this as a priority for them. And that's, in the current context. More generally, historically, Israel was seen as an ally, was seen as a democratic partner in the Middle East. And those Western powers are very slow to realize the gap between this rhetoric and the reality on the ground, which, especially with the current government, is really very remote from the description of this Israel as a liberal Western ally in the Middle East. It is a destabilizing government that is creating considerable risk within the region and is escalating rapidly the situation both in Gaza and in the West Bank.
Yair Wallach, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for bringing your insight into the situation there. Very much appreciated.